What's up, metalheads? Welcome to the Scrap Metal Podcast, the show for the misfits who've been listening to the same music since high school. I'm your host, John von Frankenstein, and joining me today is my metal thrashing mad co-host, Chris. Chris, I gotta ask you, man, how you feeling?
I gotta say, I am feeling Satanized.
Satanized! Yes! I'm glad I wore the appropriate shirt for this occasion. Chris, does this feeling of being sanitized? Wait, no, hold on. Satanized.
Let me get the Purell.
Does it have anything to do with how you're keeping your heavy metal street cred?
Absolutely, because I have been listening, like so many other people, to the brand new Ghost album, Skeleta? Is that it?
Yeah.
Sure.
I've heard Skeleta. I'm like, no.
See, the accent's on the last A, so it should be Skeleta.
Skeleta.
Yeah. It's Skeleta, not Skeliota.
Oh, man.
But yes, I've been listening to the new Ghost album, which I'm enjoying, but it wasn't quite what we were all expecting. I know I made the observation to you, you confirmed it, and I even saw like a Loudwire post on Instagram confirming it as well, but this album really sounds like Tobias was listening to my local classic rock radio station and said to himself, hey, what would it sound like if I wrote all these songs? Because I texted you and I was like, this sounds like Journey. Yeah. Like, it sounds like Journey. At some point I was listening to it and I was like, okay, not necessarily Journey, but what if Boston was playing Journey songs? And I texted you and you were like, yeah, you mentioned Def Leppard, you mentioned Rat, Deep Purple. Like I said, these are songs that played all the time on BAB to the point that me, my dad, and my brother would play a game on long drives where we would guess not only which band, but which song was going to be played next on BAB, and like would be right because they only played the same 15 songs over and over and over again.
Yeah.
So listening to this album, like we said, I really like it, but it like leans really into that like 80s classic rock sound that I was not really expecting, but I am enjoying the album, and yeah, that's how I've been keeping my heavy metal street cred.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I really, really like the album. I was expecting a heavier album.
Yeah.
Like once we saw the album artwork and once there were rumors that Tobias was only going to be wearing a half mask and all this stuff, and then I think I might have even sent you like some artwork that had been released before the album came out and before like our first official look at new Papa 5, and I was like, oh shit, are they going to go like super heavy, like very Opus on this album? And I think that's what everyone's guess was, or everyone's hope, because everyone always wants a band to do what they were doing 2 albums ago, right?
Yeah.
But I've seen such a divided fan base where there are people who are like, you know, all over Twitter or whatever, and they're like, I can't believe that there are people leaving the fan base because they dislike this album so much. And I'm like, that happens every album with every band. Yeah. Every fan base is always like, the band fucking sold out and they suck now and blah, blah, blah. And I feel like once I heard the first single, once I heard Satanized, I was like, oh, there's the Rockman guitar amp unit that is the invention of Tom Schultz. We've talked about that Boston sound, and the Rockman was such a famous unit to use for hair metal. It's all over a lot of the early Def Leppard albums, and just everyone was using this in that time, and Boston's the one that made it super famous. So when I first heard that sound on Satanized, I was like, oh, okay, we're going to be going like 80s glam metal and like some arena rock for sure. Yeah. I think it's Cenotaph that I was saying is like a Queen song. And that is the song that I've seen so many people say, like, oh, this is when I wrote them off. This song is way too happy. It's way too poppy. I'm like, Dance Macabre exists.
Yeah.
And, and Darkness in the Heart of My Love exists. Like, those songs are way poppier. And I really don't think it's that bad. It's kind of like Tobias went, what if Spillways had been written by Boston but was played by Def Leppard? And then we had what's his name from Journey singing all over it. Because not for anything else, for anyone that dislikes the album, that's fine. Has this followed your rule of like you like only the even numbered albums or the odd numbered ones?
It's the odd numbers. I mean, I like it, but I still prefer Impera.
Okay.
Impera because I think, like, I will say when I finally listened to the entire album, I like most of it. The last track I did not like at all.
Oh, really?
Like Excelsis or something?
Yeah.
I did not like it at all. I kept waiting for something to happen.
Okay.
And I was like, I am not feeling this.
Yeah.
The rest of the album I do enjoy. I think this is probably going to fall more in line the way I feel about Prequel, where I like a few songs. I really like a few songs, but I'm not sure how much I'm going to listen to the entire album. Where Impera, I would like, that might be my favorite Ghost album because it came out, I listened to it, and I was like, this is so fucking good. I listened to it like 40 times the week it came out. I loved that album, and I loved that arena rock feel, which felt like it was more going for just like the epic sound, whereas this feels like we're going for the radio friendly sound, which isn't bad. It's not bad. It's just, I was hoping they would build off of the epic sound of Impera, and instead it feels like he toned it down a little bit. Just a little bit, but it does feel like he's holding back from what he did on Impera. But it's not, for me, it's not like it's bad.
Yeah.
It's just there's other Ghost I'd rather listen to, and it does continue to follow my Ghost and, to an extent, Indiana Jones opinions that only the odd numbered releases are good. The even numbered releases are disappointing. But the new Indiana Jones video game is fucking phenomenal. So I don't know where that lands on the Indiana Jones release scale, but the new video game is fucking amazing. I need to talk about this. The villain is a Nazi archaeologist who brags about knowing the deadly martial art karate. And the last thing you do in the game is fight the Nazi archaeologist in like a fist fight. So you've got this dude in like a vest and dress pants doing the fucking crane style and like doing side kicks on you. It's the silliest thing in the world, and I fucking love it so much.
Oh my God. So, you know what? Let us know if you guys want us to do a tier list of all the Indiana Jones villains. Or if you'd rather us do a tier list video of all of the Ghost releases, because I think that would be a lot of fun. Maybe we could go song by song. Oh shit, that would be like a big mega episode.
Yeah, that would take forever.
We would have to release that as like some sort of bonus content. You know what I mean? Like, and I love a band that gifts us bonus content.
Yes.
I feel like Ghost does it in the way that they release the lore videos and stuff like that go along with their releases. But a lot of times you've got bonus tracks that are released on albums. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're talking about today. We're talking about our favorite bonus tracks. They could be bonus tracks on foreign releases. They could be hidden tracks or just something else that's like, hey, this was a weird misprint of this album. We're going to re-release it, and now that's going to be a bonus track, even though it was never really supposed to be on there. Yep. Chris, again, you brought this genius idea to us. Are you excited to get into this discussion of your favorite bonus tracks?
I am so excited to talk about my favorite bonus tracks. Like you mentioned, I suggested this idea based on a Reddit thread that I saw where one of the subreddits I follow is Today I Learned, where someone will share something that they learned. And I'm gonna have to assume, Gen Z kid posted Today I Learned that musical artists used to have hidden tracks on their CDs where the last track would have a bunch of silence and then there'd be a hidden track. And the comments were filled with millennials and Gen Xers who were like, this has aged me like centuries. Like all of my favorite albums in the 90s and 2000s had bonus tracks that did that exact thing. And so thinking about the bonus tracks that I have loved, I thought this would be such a fun episode to, discuss these bonus tracks, talk about these hidden things, and, talk about how I had to fast forward over 12 minutes of silence to try and find the bonus track that I was looking for.
Dude, I loved the way that bands would hide them because yes, you did have the releases that were like, okay, this is a bonus track and we're going to make you listen to like weird, like droning noises or ambient sounds in order to get to the track. Or you'd have like the song where like the ticker on your boombox or your Walkman would play backwards.
Yes.
It would like count down. Do you remember that?
Yes.
And like, you don't get that with strats. Oh God, Chris, this conversation's making me feel real old. Because you don't get that anymore with streaming, and you'll get it as either a little tag on the previous track or something that opens like the track proper.
Yep.
And it doesn't hit the same way.
No.
It was something special, like, where it would be something that it's just you're like looking at your Walkman going, what the fuck is this thing doing? Why is this counting down like 12 seconds? The whole the intro to Break Stuff for Limp Bizkit off of Significant Other, where they're like breaking dishes and like bottles or whatever, and it would count down and they like break a bottle. They're like, that's how you do it. And then Break Stuff starts. Like, that's so cool. Yeah. But you also had the joy of watching your boombox or your Walkman count down backwards.
Yes.
Because this was a true hidden track or something like that. That's just in there as like a little honorable mention. But Chris, why don't you start us off? Give us your first favorite bonus track.
So the first bonus track I'm going to talk about is from a band that I've talked about a bunch. That's the band AFI. And they would love to, the last track of an album would be 17 minutes long. And the song would only last 3 minutes. And then there'd be 12 minutes of silence. I believe on their first album, there wasn't even a bonus track at the end. It was just like sound clips from Reservoir Dogs, because that's what the album cover was parodying, was the Reservoir Dogs poster. But they did it a bunch, and so they have a bunch of bonus tracks, but my favorite of their bonus tracks is the song This Time Imperfect off of their 2003 album Sing the Sorrow. Once again, the last track, the leaving song, is like 20 minutes long. And you have the leaving song, which is only like 4 minutes long. And then there's several minutes of silence. Then there's like a whole interlude where there's like some spoken word stuff going on.
Henry Rollins is on the album?
It's something with like, they had like a kid reading letters that Davey Havok's grandfather had written to his wife during World War I or some shit like that. But then eventually they get to the song This Time Imperfect, which is a phenomenal song. I love it so much. It's such a good song. And for a long time, since it wasn't on the track listing, I didn't know what the song was called. You know, there was no title for it. So I had no idea what it was called. And so Now, when you stream it, there's, the leaving song, and then there's like whatever the interlude is, and then it's called This Time Imperfect. And at some point I learned that the title is called This Time Imperfect. And that's what made that so much fun, was that it was this bonus track that you didn't even know what the name of it was. You just knew that it was a secret song at the end of this album. And so I always thought that was really cool. And this was, like I said, AFI and their bonus tracks were the first bonus tracks I thought of. And so that's why the first song I wanted to talk about was AFI's This Time Imperfect.
Chris, I love that you mention the art of the bonus track, or the art of the hidden track. Because the thing is, like, when you would look at the track listing back then, if it gave you the lengths of each song, the song with the hidden track wouldn't, it would just give you the length of whatever that song was. Yep. You wouldn't usually have, like, the last song is 25 minutes long.
Yeah.
And you're just going like, why the fuck? I mean, like, okay, I don't want to throw this in there and be like, all of Follow the Leader by Korn is a hidden track, technically, because there's 17 minutes of silence or whatever. But even something like that, I remember being like, what? I got to skip to track 17 and that's where it starts? But a great example of what it was like back then. Also, like, not having any idea what the song was called.
Yeah.
And just having to figure out, like, okay, what the fuck am I listening to right now? At the end of the song Scissors by Slipknot, I had a deluxe issue of the album when I first bought it. And so after the song Scissors, you've got Scissors itself is like an 8-minute long song with a crazy interlude that eventually ends. But then it's just silence that you would have to skip through. It was probably like 4 or 5 minutes of silence, maybe longer. But then it's like a minute. No, it's maybe like 2 minutes or 3 minutes of what sounds like a bunch of guys like just hanging out in a warehouse, maybe watching porn, maybe watching a snuff film, and someone throwing up in reaction to it. And then in my head, like years later, right? I listened to this album in middle school. When I was in college, I was like, were these guys watching Two Girls, One Cup? And like, was it around back then? Would they have seen this back then? And that's what they're reacting to? Because it's also someone vomiting from whatever it is that they're watching. But then you've got, and in comes the song Eeyore, which at the time, I did not know what this song was called. It didn't have a title on that release. And they never mentioned the name Eeyore. It wasn't until Slipknot released their live DVD, Disaster Pieces, where they call the song out. And Corey's like, all right, up next, Eeyore. And then they start that song. And I'm like, that's a song. That's a fucking song. That's the one where the guy's throwing up in the beginning. And so that's how I learned the name of the song. Where, yeah, you're right. Like, the bonus tracks or hidden songs used to just be this secret thing that then you would like talk about with your friends. Like, have you left the album on? Like, have you just let it play like while you're doing your homework? And, oh yeah, and then this other song starts, right? And you get to talk about that.
Yeah.
And I really hate sounding old, but I miss that so much. I mean, it's not to say that I can't just take my old CD and buy a CD player, which I no longer own a CD player, but I very well could. I have looked into buying a CD deck for this exact purpose of being able to be like, sitting down and listening to my albums and my vinyls and my CDs and stuff like I used to. But yeah, the art of giving us the bonus track or hiding that track is so lost today.
Yeah.
And I love that experience. Chris, what is the next bonus track? And is this another like hidden one where you had to like turn the CD upside down and play it backwards or something like that?
Nothing like that, but once again, I did have to wait to get to the track. But I want to talk about that a little bit more because other ideas are coming to me that aren't necessarily bonus tracks, but it is silly things that bands did. You know, on Sum 41's album, Half Hour of Power, the last song is called Another Time Around. And it's like 6.5 minutes long, but the song is only like 3 minutes long. Okay. And the joke is that the last track extends the entire runtime to exactly 30 minutes so that it truly is a half hour of power. Similarly, on Municipal Waste's album, The Art of Partying, on the song Born to Party, the song itself is only like a minute long. But on the physical release, they didn't do this, at least not on the copy that I have. But on streaming, when I listen to the album, that track is 4 minutes, 20 seconds long. Because what they do at the end is they share a clip of, I think just before that album came out, a previous drummer or original drummer had passed away. And so they shared this clip of him goofing off in the studio, singing this like made up song. And so they included that on the album and they put it at the end of the track so that that last track for an album called The Art of Partying, a band all about drinking and smoking weed, that last track is 4:20 long, which is very funny. And then, of course, I've talked about, I think it would be considered a recent episode if I didn't delay us by 5 months, but there was Ministry's Houses of the Mole, where there's like Psalm 43 or Psalm 69 or some shit like that, where the album actually has 69 tracks, which I am very thankful to Al Jorgensen for doing that, because instead of having to fast forward and hope that I don't fast forward too far into what the bonus track is and then rewind and then just end up sitting around waiting for the 45 seconds of silence to pass, he at least has 60 additional tracks of 2 seconds of silence that you can just skip through until you get to track 43 and track 69. But this is another band who decided, fuck all that, you're going to have to wait the 10 minutes of silence, plus we're going to put some other stuff in there to fake you out. That is the band Anthrax, and on their album Worship Music is the bonus track New Noise, which is a cover of the song New Noise from the band Refused. Now, I knew that this was going to be a bonus track on the album because Anthrax had decided to, I guess, really fuck over two lead singers, because John Bush was their lead singer, and then it was like the 20th anniversary of Among the Living. Mm-hmm. So they brought Joey Belladonna back to tour with him. Mm-hmm. And John Bush is like, oh, I guess I'm not in the band anymore, reforms Armored Saint. Uh-huh. And then Anthrax is like, hey, wait, but you're still our singer. We weren't going to record with Joey. We were just touring with him. And John Bush is like, well, I'm in a different band now, so, sucks to suck. So then they get like another lead singer, record the album Worship Music, mm-hmm. and then decide, actually, we're just going to bring Joey back. And had Joey re-record all of the vocals, so that lead singer never even got an album released. But
oh my God,
because they recorded the entire album and then didn't release it, the track listing leaked. And it included that this song New Noise by Refused was going to be covered, which is a song that I love that was in one of the Tony Hawk games, like all of my favorite music. But yeah, I was so excited when this album came out. And again, the same thing. I knew, because Anthrax had done this before, spoiler alert for later in the episode, Anthrax had done this before where there was a large section of silence and then the bonus track would start. And that's exactly what they did on Worship Music. Now, it's not unheard of for an Anthrax song to be very long. So even if you see that a song is 10 minutes long by Anthrax, it might not, clue you in that there's a bonus track. But in this case, there was a bonus track. And it was a cover, which I think some of these bonus tracks do end up being. I think AFI's bonus track being an original song was kind of something different for them. Usually their bonus tracks were covers, and on their vinyl releases, they were usually Misfits covers. But so to have Anthrax doing a cover of a song that I already knew I liked, it was just really cool to hear Anthrax and Joey do their rendition of this song, New Noise by Refused. So that's why this was another bonus track I knew I wanted to talk about.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm sure that you refused to leave that one off your list. So, before I mentioned Limp Bizkit and their release Significant Other, and that album closes out with a sort of bonus track. I guess it's technically an outro. Well, no, because they have an outro, and then you get the rant. But that is the rant from Matt Pinfield at the end of the album Significant Other. And it's literally Matt Pinfield just being like, you see, I'm going to tell you why this album is great. And like, you've got to remember that this album came out in 2000. So he's really just like insulting all of the bubblegum boy bands and girl bands, you know, the Britney Spearses and Christina Aguileras of the world, who were around at the time. And he's basically like pumping Limp Bizkit up and saying like, yeah, you know, at least these guys are doing something. Like, fuck, you know, if you're going to do it, like, God, I forget the exact rant itself. It's like 5 minutes long, but he is just being like, you know, they are doing something against everything that's coming out right now. And it's so funny to hear someone who, especially back then, was pretty much like the only metal guy that was around.
Yeah.
Because I remember Matt Pinfield being like the rock guy on MTV. Like he would host shows here and there. And like I mentioned before, the early 2000s, Headbangers Ball didn't come back until maybe, 05, 06?
Yeah.
When Josta started hosting it again?
I know Jamie Josta was hosting it. I don't remember when that happened, but I remember that coming back.
But before then, you didn't really have any heavy metal representation on MTV or anything else, really.
Yeah.
So to have someone like Matt Pinfield, who you knew was the heavy metal guy, come on and rally behind a band who was doing something that was very looked down upon, especially at that time.
Yeah. Because
you had the likes of a lot of the nu metal guys that were coming out. You know, you had Korn, you had Metallica was still coming out with music at that point. You know, they had Load and Reload. So Limp Bizkit, in doing their nu metal, was super looked down upon. So to have someone like Matt Pinfield kind of rally behind them was really cool. The only thing now is I'm second guessing if this is actually a bonus track or hidden track or not. But regardless of that, whatever, it's our show. We're going to do what we want, like Sunfire says. But with that, Chris, I turn the microphone back over to you. Can you give us your next favorite bonus track?
So my next bonus track is a band who made it easy for all of us and put on the track listing that, hey, this song is considered a bonus track on this album. And that is the Manowar song Die for Metal, which is off of their 2007 album Gods of War. The reason this is considered a bonus track is because the rest of the album is considered a concept album. All of the songs are about Norse mythology and tell the story of the Edda, which is like the Norse Bible, and tells all of these stories about Norse mythology. They have songs about Loki and Odin and Thor and Odin's 8-legged horse Sleipnir. And like, it's very much just telling the stories of, you know, Norse mythology and the Norse gods. And then tacked on at the end is classic Manowar, where it's a song about how they rock harder than anyone in the world, with a song called Die for Metal, which is such a good song. And it's such a cheesy song, because I know one of the early lyrics in the song is like something about like, Joey is singing, or not Joey, Eric Adams, not the mayor of New York, is like talking about how he's like walking down the street and he heard music coming from a hall and he goes in and the guy who greets him hands him a beer and all this and that. And I'm like, this is so cheesy, yet it's so Manowar. I fucking love it. And like, it starts off with like, you know, the whole band like has gang vocals like, they can't stop us, let them try, for heavy metal we will die. And like, it's just classic Manowar, which is why I love it. But because the album is a concept album that is all about, you know, Norse mythology, they had this song that did not fit in at all. And they were like, this is a bonus track. This is a little something extra for you. For those of you that maybe aren't as into Joey DeMaio trying to write classical music and, you know, writing these songs that are just about, you know, Odin and Thor, here's a song that's just about how fucking hard we rock and why we love heavy metal. So this was a bonus track that I knew I had to talk about.
I love that. Manowar knows exactly what they are and exactly what their audience wants from them.
Yeah.
There's no secret. It's like, yes, a concept album about Norse mythology is still very on brand for Manowar. Yeah. But I don't know them well enough. I don't know their material well enough to say like, are any of the songs off of that album like live staples for them? Is that what people are calling out for, or do they want to hear "Blow Your Speakers"?
Yeah, because I think I'll admit I've listened to Gods of War, and there are good songs in it, but I think there's also a lot of them just trying to be too artistic and too creative. So, okay. And Manowar is also someone who like, they've put out more recent music that is just like, guys, you don't have to keep doing this. Like, you can just play the music you already wrote 30 or 40 years ago. You don't have to keep writing new music. So I only saw them the one time at the Paramount, and it was a fun time, but yeah, I don't think they played anything off of this album. I feel like the latest they might play is off of Warriors of the World, which is from 2002. Okay. They might have played, I know, because there's Die for Metal, and then there was also, I forget what it was, but it was off of like an EP or something. I forget the name of the song, but it had a similar vibe of like, this is us kind of, I Believe. That's the song where the chorus is like, if you want to win tonight, say I believe, which is like a very, it's the same kind of, 80s uplifting type of shit that Manowar did. So like they might play some of that, but I feel like some of the other stuff, where they're really trying to experiment, Joey is trying to show off as a songwriter. I don't know how much of that really gets played live. It's mostly the, Blow Your Speakers, Kings of Metal, Death Tone, stuff like that.
Yeah. So my next pick is no doubt that this is a bonus track, a hidden track at the very, very end of the album. And we don't really get skits anymore. Like, we don't get skits on albums anymore. And that was a thing that you would get from time to time. You'd have like a skit thrown in there. Or like you mentioned before, it's just like the guys fooling around in the studio.
Yeah.
And just like some stupid conversation that they're having. And then it would go into a bonus track or a hidden track. And I brought this album up already. But Follow the Leader by Korn is just a sandwich of silence. You've got, what is it? Maybe, I don't know, 15 minutes, 16 minutes, something like that, of silence at the beginning of the album once you skip through all the tracks in order to get to the first actual song on there. And after the closer on the album, then you've got like another 5 or 6 minutes of silence. And I can't confirm what band member it is. I always thought it was Fieldy. I always just assumed it was him. But it's someone talking about various narcotics and farting and like just ridiculousness. someone coming over and being like, "Hey, are you watching that grill?" So I'm like, "Are they in a studio? Are they in someone's backyard? What the fuck is going on right now?" But I knew this whole entire skit, like as a teenager, I knew it by fucking heart. I knew all of the very obviously inside jokes that, we're not meant to get or understand.
Yeah.
But I would quote them constantly. And then like it ends with him being like, yeah, so then, he showed up and he was like, hey, you want to go get a taco? And then it just goes into a cover of Earache My Eye, originally by Cheech and Chong. But it's Korn doing Earache My Eye with Cheech Marin on vocals. And it is so fucking awesome. I love this cover. I love this bonus track so much. So not only do you have minutes and minutes of silence, not only do you have someone talking about getting tacos and drugs, but then you've got Cheech Marin singing with Korn. And this was the first time I'd ever heard the song. I did not realize that this was a cover. I just thought that this is... I was aware of who Cheech and Chong were. And so in listening to it, I was like, is that the guy from Cheech and Chong? And it wasn't until like I was a little bit older and I saw Cheech and Chong Up in Smokes that I was like, oh shit, this is the song that Korn did. And it's so good. It's the song is so ridiculous, and the down-tuned 7-string guitars work perfectly for this riff, which is just like the ugliest sounding riff ever. And it's awesome. It's awesome. That whole entire album is just such an experience when you consider that back in the day, you literally had to just skip through to get to the song. I think that the back of the album, again, how like some track listings wouldn't have the full length of the actual track. It would just give you whatever the song comes out to be.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking I had like some sort of misprint of the album every time I put it on, because I'm like, there's no way that this should not be starting this late into the album. Like, why is track 1 track number 17 or something like that? It was 13 or 17. I don't know. But yeah, Earache My Eye, the cover by Korn. It's so good. It's so much fun. It's so ridiculous. And having Cheech Marin singing on it is just an absolute bonus. Chris, do you have any other hidden or bonus tracks or otherwise that you want to hit us up with?
I do have another bonus track I want to talk about, but the way you were just talking about how like you had to skip tracks or like there would be like other stuff going on. I'm pretty sure. Yeah.
You mentioned it before. Like if you went too far, it's like, shit, they're already talking about the hot dogs. I got to go back because I want to hear the skip from the beginning.
Stuff like that. But like, I'm pretty sure when I listened to, I forget the name of the album, but the Typo Negative album with Love You to Death, I'm pretty sure that starts with them like goofing off for several minutes until you finally get what would be considered the first song on the album.
Yeah, I think it's called like Ground Lift or Bad Ground, something like that.
Something like that. And so I know they did that. And then I also remember, talking about like how you had to skip to track 17 just to get track 1. I remember my dad had brought home what was being called like the soundtrack of the Osbournes, like the TV show. And so what it had was it had a listing of the tracks on the back. Uh-huh. But in between each song were clips from the TV show.
Oh my God.
So the tracks weren't numbered because the numbers wouldn't line up on a CD. Because track 1 might be Crazy Train, but track 2 isn't whatever the listing has. It's a clip of Ozzy Osbourne saying, "I'm the king of fucking darkness." And then track 10 isn't whatever System of a Down song they put. It's actually Sharon Osbourne yelling at Ozzy about something. So like trying to burn it to my computer was like a nightmare because I was trying to get these songs, but like it would automatically name the songs what it thought the track listing was.
Yeah.
And then there was supposed to be like 15 songs, which meant there were 30 tracks, and the first 15 tracks would be called whatever was on the album, and the last 15 would be called Untitled, when really the real songs were in there. So that was a nightmare. That was the type of shit we had to deal with as, you know, youth with our CDs and burning music to a computer. But the bonus track I want to talk about is actually a bonus track that I'm kind of disappointed that was never on an American release, because that is Gwar and their cover of Carry On My Wayward Son. This was... So the first time they ever covered this song was on the AV Club's Underground series or something, undercover. I don't know what the fuck they called it, but bands would come in and cover artists. That's how I found Screaming Females. They covered Taylor Swift's Shake It Off. Gwar came in, and the first song they did was Carry On My Wayward Son. And it was fucking phenomenal. It was so good that they turned this into a thrash song. Odorous was changing the lyrics. It was just so much fun. Then, I forget which service we had, but there used to be a TV channel called Access, AXS, where they would show like all sorts of stuff, including concerts. And Gwar live streamed a concert on this channel. So I come home from work one night and put on the live stream, and it's, 1 o'clock in the morning, and I'm watching Gwar play a concert on this channel. And during their encore, they played their cover of Carry On My Wayward Son. And so because they played it live, I was like, oh, I'm really hoping on their next album they include this cover. And whatever the next album was, they didn't include it. Eventually, on their album Battle Maximus in 2013, the European version had a recording of this cover. And you can hear the cover if you listen to it on streaming on Spotify. But it wasn't on an American release, so if you bought the American CD, you never got to hear it. You just had to resort to watching the YouTube video from the AV Club, which I've done countless times. Because their cover is so good. And plus there's the banter with Odorous before the song, where Odorous is like, oh, the first time I heard this song was when these guys were playing it, and I thought they wrote it. And I was like, you guys are playing this shitty music. We're never playing that song again. And then Odorous goes on and he's like, Kansas comes from a time period where bands were naming themselves after geographical locations. And let's hope that never happens again, because those bands suck. And then they go in and they play the song, and it's so funny. It starts off with just the vocals. He forgets the words, has to ask Beefcake what the words are so he could continue. It's the YouTube video of them covering it is such a good time, which is why I wanted to hear them play it. Now, thankfully, it is recorded as a bonus track on a European release. And I was just really happy to see that they did eventually include their cover of Carry On My Wayward Son as a bonus track.
I love that you mention getting releases like foreign releases.
Yeah.
Where it's like, wait a minute, how come we didn't get any of these?
Yes.
Because I feel like that happened pretty often. You know what I mean? Especially like if you had a band that was way more popular in Europe, then they were going to have completely different track listings or like bonus tracks.
Yep.
And a great example of that is Children of Bodom's album Hatebreeder. I believe it was the European release that has a cover of Iron Maiden's Aces High on it. And I remember this is like this was also something that shows our age, where you would like go to download music by an artist, and then it's like, oh, cover by such and such artist, and it's, an Iron Maiden cover, but you were never quite sure if it was truly being covered by the band that they said it was being covered
Yes.
by. like downloading, which all of us have had, all millennials have had the experience of, like, Korn featuring Marilyn Manson and Kitty and such as like 5 different bands on one song, and then really it's just Bill Clinton telling us, like, not to download stuff illegally. But Children of Bodom's cover of Iron Maiden's Aces High, I love that cover. It's so fast, it's so over the top, and it's very indicative of early Children of Bodom, where the vocals were just, like, so harsh and so high pitched and so I don't know, they seemed to get a little, I don't want to say mainstream, but they seemed to get a little bit more palatable as the band went on. Like after Hate Crew Death Roll, the vocals felt a little bit more palatable. Yeah. Whereas on Hate Breeder, and on this cover of Aces High, it's just super brash, very in your face, very raw. It felt very raw and, like, I say amateur, but I don't mean it. For lack of a better word, amateurish. But it gives it a very real feel. Yeah. You feel like it's a band who's at the beginning of their career, still trying to, like, polish things up a little bit. But I appreciate that. I definitely appreciate that. And I love that at least now with streaming, it does make it easier. I can't imagine what it was like back in the day where it's like, no, you had to order a pressing from Europe. Yeah. Or you had to get a Japanese release in order to get this one song because the sound quality of it on the download that you're getting from Kazaa sucks. So you've got to actually seek out the physical copy. Yep. Yeah, it was tough back then, man. It was tough back then having to be like, oh, all right, yeah, I want to find something that's really rare. I have to get the actual thing. I can't cheat and just stream it or download it. Yep. See, again, not to be talking about ourselves like we're that old, but it is something that's so specific to where our generation was on the cusp of all of this file sharing technology. And still having been brought up with all of that physical media. Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It really does feel like we've gotten both worlds, that we got the creativity that went into having bonus tracks on a physical release that had silence in the middle because you really wanted it to feel like a hidden track. But then we also got to the file sharing. It's funny, you talk about, downloading songs and they're attributed to the wrong people. Weird Al has talked about how, like, a lot of parodies would be downloaded attributed to Weird Al that were very clearly not Weird Al. But Weird Al's problem with it was that Weird Al tries not to do, like, he tries to do family-friendly music. He doesn't curse in his music. Right. And there would be parodies like The Devil Went Down to Jamaica, which is a song about smoking weed, and it's attributed to Weird Al. And Weird Al is like, not only is that, I don't want people to think that that's my style of parody, but you're also attributing to me the work someone else did. So there's two things going on there that, he wasn't really a fan of. And so, yes, I went through that as well, downloading things and it's attributed to someone and it's not the right, artist, or it's not the right track or whatever it was. But by the time I downloaded this particular album, I had perfected the art of torrenting and file sharing and was able to get my hands on a international copy of Weezer's Red album because it was the international version that had their cover of The Weight, originally done by the band. And this song is so good. I love the original, and hearing Weezer do it just like made me fall in love with the song even more. So this was another bonus track I wanted to make sure I mentioned because, again, it was an international bonus track. You had to have that international copy to get this
bonus track, which does make it frustrating when I listen to the album on Spotify and this cover isn't there. And so then I have to go find the version that I burned to a CD or, find it on YouTube or something and listen to it that way because I love this cover. I think it's such a great cover. And it's pretty frustrating when, other countries' releases get these bonus tracks that are so freaking good.
Yeah, I guess you have to have something that feels exclusive for those other markets. You know what I mean? Because the American market is so big, and I guess we're just so fucking greedy that we're like, how come we're not getting this? What do you mean Japan's the only one that has this track?
Yep.
But yeah, there is a little bit of exclusivity there, which I guess is cool for those other markets. But like, it's funny just talking about how hard it was to just get all of this stuff. I remember it was, was it Sleepy Hollow? It was a song called Sleepy Hollow that was, you would download it and it's like Sleepy Hollow by Korn, Marilyn Manson, Kitty, and Linkin Park. And you're like, what? And I think it was Manson. I don't know. You guys have to let us know in the comments. I'm sure there's a handful of you at least that know exactly what I'm talking about. But I loved, and I'm throwing this in as a bit of an honorable mention, but I love that there was also the time where like other bands would show up on the hidden track, where you would have like, the example I'm thinking of is at the very end of Coal Chamber's first album, after the song Pig. And it's funny because on Apple Music, it actually comes up listed as Pig with hidden message plus silence. So it's a song which actually comes in at 8 minutes and 27 seconds, give or take. But I remember the first time I was listening to this in the car and listening to the actual CD. And then at the end of it, I hear a very familiar voice, guitar sound, and verse. And I'm like, what the hell? And I go back a little bit and I listen to it again and I'm like, oh shit, what is Deadsy doing at the end of this Coal Chamber song? And it's Elijah playing his guitar, his like super distorted, fuzzed out, synthy sounding guitar. And he's singing the second verse, I think it is, to the song Elements, or The Elements. And I was like, there's no way. And then I go through like the liner notes and I'm like looking, and I think that there was a special thank you to Deadsy or at least Elijah Blue. And I was like, holy shit, all of these guys are friends. And I think it was because they had been discovered by Ozzy or like Sharon, and they had all done like Ozfest together, so they were like running within the same sorts of circles and stuff like that. But it's so funny because I hope that stuff like that starts to come back. Yeah. I am fully like, I'm not here saying get rid of streaming, but what I'm saying is, knowing the format that we're working with, I would love to see newer bands say, yeah, this 6-minute EP is now going to be 26 minutes. There's going to be 20 minutes of silence at the end of our last song, and then we're going to have like a 1.5-minute banger that we just rip through. And I guess it's just finding a way to play around with the format that you're in now, so that you can still give your fans something fun and something hidden, something that feels like a bonus. Yeah. For them to just kind of feel special in that moment. Yeah. Because you do sort of feel special when you're listening to a bonus track. You're like, oh, the band put this here as a hidden message for me to listen to. Yeah. And so you create that sort of bond with them. You know what I mean? Is that a little idealistic of me, or is it? Did you ever feel that way where it's like, oh yeah, the band put this specifically for me to hear? Or does that sound like the rantings of a madman?
I don't know how much of it is, feeling like it was specifically for me, but I think something that you mentioned early in this episode that I think made it special for fans and made it special for fans when they would interact with the band is you would feel that kind of camaraderie of like, oh, did you fast forward that last track or did you just stop listening, It's like, it's almost like a reward for listening to the entire album. Are you someone who buys an album and only listens to the singles, or are you someone who plays the whole album, lets it play, and sees what happens? Yeah. And then you get to talk to fans, because then when you talk to someone who does do that, now you know, okay, not only do I know that we love this band, I know that we've both listened to this entire album, and I know that we could talk to this person about this entire album. And then when the band is like, hey, we're going to play this song, and you have fans that have always loved this bonus track are like, oh my God, they're playing it live. And then you might have fans that only listen to the singles or listened to a version or a rip of the album that was missing tracks. Because I knew that would happen to friends in high school. Yep. I was talking to them about a song that I loved, and they were like, what the fuck are you talking about? And I'm like, this song, it's in between these two songs on the album. Like, not a bonus track. It's in the middle of the album. Yeah. And they're like, I've never heard this song before in my life. And I'm playing the album for them, and they're like, shit, I downloaded the album, and it was missing a track. And so, like, you would have instances like that, and then you have, you're seeing the band live, and they play this bonus track live. I think that's really cool, the way, it's something that can kind of, fans that are in the know, it's a special treat for them, and then it's a way for fans that aren't in the know to learn about this bonus. It makes me think of not a bonus track, but something that I have seen bands do. And this was my first introduction to an artist doing this, is that growing up, my mom became a big fan of country music, especially Garth Brooks.
Okay.
And the Garth Brooks song, Friends in Low Places, is a fun little song about, being, instead of having friends in high places, it's, hanging out with the losers at the bar.
Yeah.
When he plays live, there's a secret fourth verse that he sings at the live shows, but doesn't play, isn't on the album version. And I remember my mom listening to the live version of this song, and he finishes what would be considered the album version, and then the crowd starts screaming. And you hear Garth Brooks like, what are you guys so excited about? And it's like 2 or 3 minutes of like the band just jamming, him kind of like talking a little bit of shit and being like, oh, do you guys know about some like secret verse to this song or something? And then he ends up singing the secret verse. And it's one of those things that's kind of like, and what made that secret verse so fun is that I guess he kind of present himself as an artist who wouldn't necessarily say this on the album. So the end of the verse is something along the lines of, so you can kiss my ass, and then goes into the final chorus. And so that's what makes it fun, is something that he does at the live shows. Similar to how like Billy Joel doesn't really curse, but at the end of a show, he's always like, don't take shit from no one, and like that type of shit. So it's So I to get back to your original question, it's not something that I ever felt like, ooh, this is special for me. It's just something that always made me feel like, oh, this is a cool secret for the people that do listen to the entire album or will sit there and listen to the entire song, because you never know what a band is going to mix in there. And so you don't want to feel like you're missing out on something that the artist clearly put out there for you to find.
Chris, this was a really fun discussion on bonus and hidden tracks. I really love getting to reminisce on all the different ways that bands used to hide songs for us.
Yep.
But now, why don't you give us your suggestion for this week?
So my suggestion this week, like I mentioned at the beginning of the episode, Anthrax was going to show up again in this episode, and my suggestion is their song Lone Justice off of their 2004 Almost Live album, Greater of Two Evils. This was an album where John Bush and the band played classic songs originally done by Neil Turbin and Joey Belladonna, and they had a live audience of like, I don't know, maybe like 50 to 100 Anthrax fans in a studio where they performed the songs live. And when you listen to the physical copy, Gung Ho is the last track. But then there would be several minutes of silence. Then there would be what sounded like a song being played backwards. And then a few more seconds of silence. And then the song Lone Justice would start. And while I was at my high school radio station, we had, a program where I could flip around what the backwards song was. It was just the chorus of Lone Justice. But
all right.
This was my introduction to this song and kind of became my favorite song off of this album. But it was such a giant pain in the ass to fast forward to get to listen to it. And similarly to other songs we talked about, because you had to fast forward and it wasn't on the track listing, I didn't know what the song was called. I just knew that I loved this song at the end of this album.
Yeah.
I don't remember if I figured out the name of the song while I was in high school and listening to this album, or if it wasn't until a friend in college gave me a burned copy of Fistful of Metal, which this song is originally off of, where I finally realized it's Lone Justice. But either way, I fucking love this song. I believe I've brought this song up before because it is loosely based on the characters from the Dark Tower series by Stephen King. So there is that heavy metal library card reference right there. But yeah, I fucking love this version of Lone Justice. So that's why my suggestion is everyone check out Anthrax and their 2004 Almost Live album, Greater of Two Evils. Fast forward through the end of Gung Ho so that you can listen to Lone Justice.
So my suggestion for this week comes by way of Black Label Society. They have a song, one of my favorite songs, Peddlers of Death, which very famously rips off the riff for Sweet Leaf. But the album version off of Sonic Brew is actually an electrified version of the original, which was a bonus track on Zakk Wylde's solo acoustic album, Book of Shadows. So on that release, which I think was a European release, you got the bonus track Peddlers of Death, and it was the original acoustic version of the song, which was the birth of Black Label Society. That was the very first song written as a Black Label song, and it was written as an acoustic song. So Zakk Wylde puts out this album, Book of Shadows. It is just all acoustic songs of his that didn't really fit in what he was doing with Ozzy. They didn't really fit in what he was doing with his country rock band, Pride and Glory. So it was just a collection for him to do this sort of singer-songwriter, Neil Young-esque, almost country type acoustic tracks. And I love this album. That's a phenomenal album. But being that Peddlers of Death off of Sonic Brew is one of my very favorite songs, to know that we can listen to the original version that gave birth to the band Black Label Society, whether it's a ripoff of Black Sabbath or not, that's pretty much... Zakk has made his career off of being like, hey, remember Black Sabbath? I'm going to do that too. And we love him for it. Yep. We love him for it, okay? As stale as the last few Black Label releases have been, I'm sorry, but we still love him for it. So go check out the original acoustic version of Peddlers of Death by Black Label Society / Zakk Wylde on the European release of Book of Shadows. A couple steps to that one. Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Scrap Metal Podcast. The time has come for us to pack up our gear, but we'll be back to rock out with you in the next episode.
Stay metal, everyone.
Good night. All right, are they still here? What are we?
Yeah, I don't know.
Is
this the bonus track of this episode?
Well, if it's gonna be the bonus track, we gotta get in real close and get real.
Oh yeah, get real close, get real nasty.
Oh, okay. I think that's the end of this bonus track.